Good evening. This is my Module 2 discussion. So in this week's lecture, Dr. Thayer defines immersion as the objective characteristics, which describe the quality and quantity of your sensory information and the ability of the virtual reality system, making an individual feel like they're somewhere else, while presence is more subjective, and how engaged the individual feels inside of the virtual world. So this week's textbooks reading, chapter 12, discusses presence. And the basic evolutionary function of presence is to allow the organism or user to differentiate between their self and their perception. And this is a vital role, especially when it comes to survival. As I read, there are 3 layers discussed in presence. There's proto-presence, core presence, and extended. And all 3 of these layers need to work hand in hand together. One of the biggest things to me is the second layer, which is core presence. The role of core presence is to distinguish the present from the imaginary. I think if you are too immersed into a real world, you can harm yourself. Depending on if you don't know your surroundings, if you're in your living room per se, or I've seen lots of videos on social media where people have their Oculus on and they're so immersed in the virtual reality in the game and they're playing and they're running into things and they're hurting themselves. Just being aware of the external world and yourself, and distinguishing between the two. And secondly, we have immersion. And we speak about incorporation in chapter 13. Incorporation requires 2 conditions. The player incorporates in the sense of internalizing or assimilating the game environment into consciousness while simultaneously being incorporated through the avatar. I think that incorporation definitely brings together immersion and presence, because if we do not have the 2 playing, in my opinion, if immersion and presence do not coexist or play hand in hand in virtual reality or augmented reality, it'll be very hard for the user to feel the full scope of what the technology medium is trying to present. I definitely agree with a lot of the things discussed in this week's reading, and the approaches to the models, especially with incorporation, because I think one of the big questions is, if one is a subjective characteristic and one is an objective characteristic, how do we really measure the 2? So I think incorporation plays a big part in bringing the 2 aspects together.